iterum dico cadete.
Welcome back to Chant, the love song of the church. Today we look at the figure for whom we now have an adjective that so often accompanies chant, Gregorian, which of course comes from the great reforming pope of the 6th century, 6th into 7th century, who was Pope Gregory the Great. Pope Gregory was a Benedictine monk and was brought into the episcopal ranks and named Bishop of Rome. But he did so much for the church in terms of liturgical revival and in a particular way with the reform and development of Gregorian chant. So up to that point, chant had of course developed, and we've already looked at the different roots from which it sprung, but a tendency had crept into the chant after Christianity was legalized and Christians could worship freely. Chant, in some cases, tended to be overdone, or it was lengthened excessively. And in a particular instance, the introit, which marks the entrance until Mass begins, so essentially for the procession, would be often elongated so much that it took on a character of its own. So one of Pope Gregory's reforms was to, in certain cases, simplify and cut back the chant to regularize them. And in another case, he insisted that Gregorian chant should be sung as a prayer. Pope Gregory bemoaned the fact that often deacons were ordained more for their musical skill than for their holiness of life. Why was this? Well, in his time, it was the practice for the deacon to sing the gradual, which is the chant which marks a transition from the readings of the New and Old Testament into the Gospel. So this chant was particularly difficult, and people who were very ambitious and perhaps loved their voice more than they should have vied for the office of deacon to show off. And Pope Gregory noticed this. So he stripped the honor of singing the gradual away from deacons. He said, from now on, the subdeacon or even the acolyte will be given this chant, because he recognized something important. Gregorian chant is a prayer. Chant is a prayer, and it cannot be tainted by pride. It must be delivered with humility of spirit. Reminds me of something St. Augustine wrote centuries before Gregory's time, which is, when we pray the Psalms, when we sing the Psalms, our heart and our minds must connect with what our voices are proclaiming. So the holiness of life is essential to the one who sings chant. These are a few vignettes, examples of what Pope Gregory was doing in regards to reforming and regularizing chant. It is from his great influence in chant that we now refer to it today almost ubiquitously as Gregorian chant. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to hear future episodes of Chant, the love song of the church.